English could be phased out in the EU and replaced with a new Euro language as the bloc tries to reposition itself in the wake of Britain's departure. Some furious French MEPs have demanded English be ditched in the corridors of power in Brussels and Strasbourg, where it is still used in official EU communications and remains widely accepted as the standard second language across the continent. And a leading linguistics expert is now calling for a whole new language to be created for use across the bloc. Marco Modiano, a professor of English at the University of Gävle in Sweden, told Politico's EU Confidential podcast, "It's time for the people in mainland Europe who have English as a second language to determine the future of English for the European Union." Professor Modiano said the EU should take the lead in defining and promoting Euro-English, a new language complete with its own punctuation, spelling, some grammar, and some vocabulary. He said a sort of Euro-English which might not always sound correct to a native speaker is already developing and should be embraced. He said, "A slip of the tongue made by a French person is not a mistake, but just as valid a version of English as that ringing out on the streets of Kent. It's not a question of whether or not Euro-English exists. It's a question of how we respond to the fact that it is evolving. Someone is going to have to step forward and say, okay, let's break our ties with the tyranny of British English and the tyranny of American English, and instead say, we are competent second language speakers. This is our language." But many linguists say French is not coming back as the EU's dominant language and multilingualism is not a practical way to communicate across the continent. Jeremy Gardner, former senior translator at the European Court of Auditors, said there was no need to create a new model, and warned that diverging from the English used in the United Kingdom and Ireland could be damaging. He said, "It's a question of democracy because the European citizen wants to, can and does speak in English. If the EU, which it could do, imposed any other language as its main official working language, it would lose its main line of communication to the European citizen." Mr. Gardner said children and other learners across the continent wanted to learn a form of English that is recognized by native speakers. He said, they didn't want a model that will help them communicate with a professor in Sweden.